Welcome everyone. My name is Jeff Smith. I'm a product manager here at Oracle. Today I'm going to give a demonstration, live demo, and a few PowerPoint slides to season the meal a bit on Oracle SQLcl, which the full name of that is kind of a mouthful. Oracle SQL Developer command line. We've abbreviated that extremely to just SQLcl. And I'll explain that why that name makes sense here in a few minutes. This is being recorded. It'll be up on YouTube later today, maybe tomorrow morning, depending on how much editing I have to do. You're welcome to ask questions. So if you ask a question in the chat, I'll try to get to those as we go. If you want to unmute yourself, you can throw them out there. We'll do Q&A at the end if you'd like. This is the best way to contact me. Well, my email is right there. Don't forget the D. But the more fun way to contact me is if you're out there on the Twitters, just tweet me at that Jeff Smith. So that's the self-promotion bit. Let's get into the product. Well, I guess the two biggest questions I get when talking about this product is what is it, and then why did we do it? So I'm going to spend a few moments on that. I've got a few slides, and I want to do as much live demonstration. I think I've already said this, but just in case I missed it, questions as we go are totally cool with me. Now, if we look at the sordid history of command line tools, or even just tools in general, from the Oracle team, here the Oracle database team. It started practically day zero, version 2 of the database. There was something there called UFI, user-friendly interface. And then that was rebranded, I guess enhanced a good bit, somewhere in the neighborhood of 85 as SQL+. And that has been with us and still ships with the database, and is a lot of people's first introduction to Oracle databases, SQL+. And then we figured that folks like GUIs, and so for Windows, a few years later, I think probably when Windows for workgroups, Windows 3, maybe NT, came out, we did build a executable for Windows, SQL +W. It was a little bit nicer, had a few more features over just using that in a raw command window. And then, of course, the internet craze hit, and we had Oracle Database 8i, where the I stands for Internet, surprise. So we also brought out iSQL+, which was a web-based SQL+, and I have to admit, I don't think I've ever used that tool. So, spoiler alert, both SQL +W and iSQL+ were both deprecated about 10 years after that, in 2008-ish, at least no longer shipped with the database or the clients. I'm sure there are customers out there that still squirreled away their copies of it and still use it. In 2006, in the very end of 2006, my team, which does SQL Developer, released something called Project Raptor. Actually, it might have been December of 2005 when that first happened. Yeah, I think it was December 2005. As an early adopter, Project Raptor, which came to be known as Oracle SQL Developer. And then in version 1.1, the SQL worksheet, where you do your interactive work with the database, introduced the script engine. So when you hit F5 or the second execute button in SQL Developer, it invokes kind of a similar code path to what happens to code when it gets run through SQL+ itself. So the number of commands, SQL+ commands, that SQL Developer supported way back there in 2007 was probably realistically 50 to 60% of what SQL+ offered. So, but it was good enough for most people. It wasn't meant to be a replacement for SQL+. But while you're in a SQL Developer and a worksheet, if you wanted to run a describe or a spool or even a prompt, even some set commands, that was all totally cool. Now, fast forward to about 2 years ago, some folks on our team started asking questions. Hey, we could take this a lot further if we'd like. Just people seem to really appreciate the things that the GUI gives us. We have an existing SQL Plus engine. Does it make sense to enhance that? And we came to the decision, well, let's try it and see if people like it. And so in 2015, we put out another early adopter. This was the first version of SQLcl, and we officially launched it in 2016, and it now ships with the database and with the clients. So if you get 12CR2, Oracle Database 12C Release 2, which is soon to be the next version of that will be version, I can't say, it'll be version something different than 12. SQLcl is there. So that's there in a client, and it's also there in the database install. And it's also included with the SQL Developer install too. Now, so SQL Plus came out in 85. I'm going to mute my peeps. There we go. So in 1985, this was one of Car and Driver's top 10 cars. And it was actually quite revolutionary at the time. I think it was a 4-cylinder with maybe a turbo in it, and people loved it. And SQL Plus was awesome in 1985. Technology advances over time. And, first of all, before we leave 1985, just in case you don't remember 1985, some of you might not have been born in 1985, gosh. The top movie was The Goonies. The top show was MacGyver. They've already remade MacGyver. I'm sure someone's in talks to remake The Goonies. We've kind of decided to remake SQL Plus. Of course, SQL Plus isn't going away, and it's still there, just like these things are still there, aren't going away. Just in case you're not familiar with SQL Developer either, it's the GUI. It's this program. It's your Swiss Army knife. It's obviously a graphical user interface. It's got database administration features in it. It's got a worksheet. It's got reporting. It's got an object browser where you can click on a table and make changes to it without writing any code. Folks like all of that. It's a Java application. So for SQL Developer, you need a JDK. And then you can run it on any operating system that supports the Oracle JDK. But 92% of you, that's Windows. And we have lots and lots of people out there using these tools. And if you have a database covered with My Oracle support, you can open support requests on SQL Developer. Now, everything I just said now also applies to SQLcl S2. So it's a Java application. Instead of requiring a JDK, you only need a JRE, which really opens the tool up to more people, because I think most computers have at least a JRE installed on them. If not, you just need to get a copy of Java 8 on your machine, which doesn't take very much. So the operating system-wise, I'm doing the demo on Windows. You can run this on Linux. You can run this on your Mac. And the support is there as well. So if you have a database support contract with My Oracle support, you can open service requests on SQLcl. So I was talking about the script engine in the worksheet. You know, you write some code, you hit F5, or you hit that little button there that I've got the red box around. And that doesn't run anything through SQL Plus. What it does is it runs the code through SQL Developer's code base that mimics SQL Plus. So we mimic line size, we mimic the breaking and the computes, and all of that good stuff. And so that's when we decided, hey, what would be cool, or would it be cool, or would people like it if we took that code that we have there when you hit F5 in a worksheet and then built an actual command line and wrap them together. Now the reason we would do that, because it doesn't really make sense just to build a new mousetrap that does the exact same thing as the old mousetraps. You got to be able to make improvements on it. So the things that folks told us they really liked, or I've noticed they've really enjoyed in SQL Developer, are things like the code insight, where as you're typing and you get suggestions, just like you're in a Linux shell and you hit tab to get file name completion. Folks might like that for their table names or their Oracle commands. Folks really, really like the history feature in SQL Developer. Now, you may have noticed SQL Plus actually added query recall in 12CR2. I'll show you what you can do in SQLcl in any version of the database and how our history differs from theirs, and you can make a decision which one you like more. Folks really like the ability in SQL Developer to get their query results out in different output formats. So maybe they want the result sets back in a JSON document, or maybe they want it back as insert statements, or maybe they want it back in CSV. I'll show you how that works. But maybe most importantly, what people really like about SQL Developer is they have an actual kind of word processor environment. You've got a cursor, you can move around the text area, make changes. You don't have to come in and out of these command line type editor tools like VI or, gosh forbid, Emacs. So we wanted to take the script engine and these SQL Dev features and extend it to a command line interface. So SQL Developer came out in '97, so we're talking about this sort of technology versus that 1985 stuff. And this is what we came up with. This is SQLcl on a Mac. So you can see I'm saying set my SQL format, which means I want the output returned in a delimited format, and I want it to be delimited with a pipe. And that output comes back in piped delimited format. SQL Developer also has a formatter, so I can say, look, I want you to format that command in the buffer so it's a little bit easier to read, and it's done that for me. So that's using SQL Developer code in a command line interface, which I now have here as well. Now, before I do any demo, I want to show you how to get started. It's very easy. Let's say 5 minutes. You could probably do it in 2 minutes, especially if you already have a JRE on your machine. You're going to want to come, just do a Google for Oracle SQLcl download. It should take you to this page, or to, stupid browser, or to this page. Doesn't matter what OS you're on, just accept the download, hit that. We've let it creep up to 19 megabytes, but it's still really, really small. It's much smaller than an Oracle client, even the instant client. And it's not an installer, it's just a zip file. And inside this zip file is the app. So just unpack this or extract this on your machine where you want it to go. Now, where I've put it on mine, just so it's easier for me to find stuff, but you could put this on your desktop or your documents folder if you really wanted to. I've put mine in program files, and I've got a SQLcl folder here, so I've got it here. Now, to launch it, maybe the easiest thing to do, I mean, we do build a little exe that'll launch the command window for you if you want, but you can copy that path, come to a command window, paste that path, and then just connect the same way that you always have, except instead of typing SQL plus, you're going to type SQL. So we're already saving you, was that 4 keystrokes? And that should put you into the database. So I've got a login script. It's on a couple different things. And then I'm ready to do all the same things I would do in SQL plus a lot more. You don't have to update your registry. You don't have to update the path. You might want to update the path just to put that bin directory in there so you can launch it from anywhere you'd like. So benefit number one, if you're okay with the Java stuff, is it's very extremely portable. I mean, it fit. You could practically email this program to yourself if you'd like. Most web servers will let you pack around 17 or 18 megabyte zip files. And there's no installer, so you don't need AppPrivs on your machine. You just unzip it and run it. Where do I want to go? Yeah, so I've talked about this is going to be as friendly to your OS as your OS is friendly to Java. But I've tried this on Windows 7, on Windows 10, on 3 different OS X operating systems, including the most recent. And I've tried it on Oracle Linux, but I've had other people run it on Ubuntu and Red Hat, and I've had no problems with it. And I know it works on Solaris as well. Now, getting into the database is going to be very similar, if not almost exactly the same as you would get in from SQL+. So we support easy connect syntax. So you just put the full connection string on the command line. So username, @password. If you don't put in a password, it'll prompt for it, followed by the server or IP address of the database, followed by the port number of the listener, followed by the service name. And we can get in that way. But we also support TNS names files. We also support LDAPs, proxy connections. We've built native SSH tunneling. So you can open a tunnel and a port forward inside SQLcl and connect through that instead of having to mess with PuTTY. And we've made it easy to set up your wallets to get into databases that way. Let me show you how to troubleshoot your TNS stuff if you're having problems getting a TNS entry to play nice. And let me just check the chat. Someone's asking about LDAP. I will show you where to go to figure out the LDAP stuff in a bit. So there's a show command in SQL+. You can say show all, and it shows a lot of stuff. We've added a few things to that, and one of those is something called show TNS, which shows you currently where we're looking for TNS names files. So it's looking where you expect it to look, and where it's ultimately found it, it's found the TNS names file in my 12C home, and it's found these 3 entries. Now I know your TNS names files will have thousands of entries in them, but if I wanted to, I could say connect demo Oracle at devday 12 PDB. The weak point of my live demos is always my typing ability. Yep, and so I'm in. Now my login script has a prompt setting in it that says show me who I am and show me what database I'm in. So that's in my prompt. You can do the same thing in SQL+, I believe. And what else do we need to talk to? Oh, by default, we'll do what's considered a thin or a JDBC connection, but if we can use, if you have an Oracle client, we'll use that and try to connect over the Oracle SQLnet driver. Yep, so I did that bit. So one of the things people are concerned about is they have all of these SQL+ scripts and they're going to start losing stuff if they switch over to SQLcl. And I'm not sure you're actually going to switch over 100% to SQLcl because you're going to still have lots of use cases for using SQL+. But we've tried to support as close to 100% as possible of the SQL+ command library and also their formatting, their SQL+ reports formatting options. And I will say we've gotten very, very close. However, we continue to find use cases that aren't quite perfect yet, and we're fixing those. The good news is we put out a patch or an update for SQLcl about every 3 months. So we're getting a lot closer and closer to that 100%. But you should be able to do the things that you've been used to doing in SQL+ and SQLcl, so you don't have to retrain your brain or your fingers, so to speak. So you still have your describe command. You can still use the change command if you don't like our inline editor. You've got the column formatting. You've got your ampersand substitution strings. All of that is going to work in SQLcl. Now, so what's the new stuff? How am I going to sell you in this new product? So let me break that out. So if someone's saying, yeah, we do support the TNS admin operating system environment variable to tell us where to go find TNS names files. So we do honor that. And my boss is reminding me that there is a nice blog post that shows how to get LDAP going. So the LDAP connection string, here's one way to do it. I'd probably do it this way. Now we do have help. If I actually just type the word help, we list you out the commands that are supported, and new things we try to highlight out a bit. So many of these you'll be able to figure out on your own. A few of them might be puzzling to you. Here's one that you can probably figure out on your own. We have the CD command. That allows me to change the directory that SQLcl is going to look for stuff and to write to. So I can run this from anywhere and write to anywhere. I don't have to exit out and relog in to get the current working directory to be updated. If you've got a command in here that you're not sure quite what it does, you can just do, like what you would expect. Help, I don't know, alias. And that's a pretty verbose topic. But what alias allows you to do is to burn in basically your own commands. An alias list will show you the commands. I'm very lazy. I've aliased a command called CLS. And all it does is it fires off a host CLS. So I'm letting the operating system clear the screen instead of using the SQL plus clear screen command, which is fine too. But again, I'm lazy. So I want to show you just 2 or 3 things that I think would be enough to sell most people, at least enough to sell you to go download this and play with it. Let's look at the old way. I hate to use the word old, that's critical. Let's look at the traditional way in which you'd run queries in the command line for Oracle. So let's say you're in university, or let's say you're just fresh on the job and they're going to introduce you to the Oracle database and they're like, here's your tool, go do stuff or go run a query. This is not a user-friendly, this is not an easily consumable result set. It's just kind of ugly printing out of the box. So what we've done is we've created this set, or basically this application setting called SQL format. And we have one called ANSI console, which is kind of a fancy way of saying when you get the output back, measure the width of the columns per page of results and best fit. So there may be a few milliseconds of performance hit because, again, we're bringing back this page size. We're looking how wide the people's names are and hire dates are. And then we're saying, okay, how much space do we need on the screen to make that fit reasonably? And we're doing that for every page. If you don't know what I'm talking about page, it's this. So it's every 25 rows it's doing that math. Set page size 120. Run that command again. And so now it only measured that data once. So it's more consistent. So I have this in my login.sql, so I don't have to set it. It's just always there. Now if I want to go back to pure SQL plus reporting mode, I just unset SQL format. I can do help set SQL format, and I can get a list of the formats available. Oops, someone's got another question. Okay, people are just talking to themselves on the chat, which is totally fine. So again, I think most of these are self-describing. So we've got comma-separated values, HTML. If you like verbose, we've got XML. If you're like one of the hot new kids in the JavaScript world, you've got JSON. ANSI console, I just demoed. We've got inserts. It's loader, that's for SQL loader. And then we have fixed, and then default is nothing. Maybe the one I should talk about is the one that's not actually shown here. I should probably log a bug on that. Set SQL format delimited. And then I can set the delimiter, so we could do something really fun. We could say I want pipe, pipe delimited, and I want single quoted strings. So that's what I get back. My strings are single quoted and my delimiter is pipe, pipe, and it's going to be that way until I exit or reset the setting. So I think that's nice. Worth the 5 minutes to find the web page and download the 20 meg file and unzip it and connect. Now, what else might you like? Let's look at the inline editor. And by that I mean, as you're typing, order by one, describe, fetch first 15 rows only. At this point, I've made 2 mistakes. I've used select star, which is crap. You should never do that. So I can just use my left arrow key and come up in the buffer, back to my first line. I can backspace over that, hit the tab key, get a list of columns available, and write it how I should have done it the first time. So I'm going to do F tab, which auto-completes, L tab, which auto-completes, EM tab, which does not auto-complete because there's 2 things that could have came to. So EMA tab, auto-complete, and then salary. Use my arrow keys again. Now as you're arrowing around, we print the little asterisk in case you've lost where the cursor is. So active line is 2 here. So I want to do order by, is that the 4th one? Descending. And first fetch 10 rows. Now to run this, I'm going to do Control R, which says execute what's in the buffer immediately. So there's that. That's my query. I didn't have to exit out to VI or Emacs. I didn't have to write it, hit enter, and go screw it, and then try to write it again. I just do it all right there inside the tool. Now, if you want to use the edit command and have it launch out to an external editor, we still support that. Maybe I want to run that query again, but a slightly different variation of it. I can use the up arrow and go back into the command history and come back and just change it. Maybe I want the top 3 most expensive employees. Run that again. Or I can just use that up arrow to come into the buffer to find what I'm looking for. And then run that. So let's talk about the history feature. And I'll try to distinguish it from SQL+. Help history. So history is a command and it's also a setting. By default, history is on, and by default, it records 100 items, and by default, that history is persistent. So I close SQLcl, I come back in 3 weeks, I open it, my history is still there. I start doing stuff, it immediately gets written to the history. And it remembers an individual query I've written, but if I also type out an anonymous block of like 15 things in it, that also gets recorded as an item. Now, you can also set help set history, I think. Yeah, I can also configure the history. I might want to include things that don't work. I think that by default is off. So if I write crap SQL that don't work, I don't want that to go into history. But as you're working on a query, if you don't want to lose it, you might want to turn that on. We have things that are blacklisted. So connection strings won't be in your history by default. And you can change what types of commands. Like maybe you don't want clear screen to go in your history. And then probably the next critical thing that you want to set is the limit. So by default out of the box, it's 100. You can balance it up as high as you want. I think once you get past a certain size, especially in a command line interface, it's not going to be that useful if you've got 13,000 items in here. So again, it's on by default out of the box. It's persistent across sessions. You can tell us what not to record, and you can tell us how many things to record. If I just type history, it shows me everything. I've got my history limit set to 250. If I see one in here that I like, I don't know, like 221, I can just type history 221. That's in the buffer, and do slash, it's going to run that. Okay, so that was 3 things really quick. We've got the inline editor. Use the arrows, mouse around, change stuff. We have query history, up and down arrows. And we also had the insight feature that you invoke using tab. Oops. And how it completes, it's going to say, I had an E there, and I hit tab, and it's like, okay, we've got in the current schema, imp and employees. Do you want one of those? Because I'm in demo. If I were to do, maybe this will work. Select one from HRE. Yeah, I've got many more things. So in the HR scheme, I've got employees, employees copy 2, imp's copy, imp's details view, imp view, and errors. So I'm going to do ED, that auto completes to this. Where, and there's my column list, where commission percent is not null. And I selected 1, so that was dumb. And we'll do first name and commission percent. So there are those people and how much they're making on their sales. More chatting going on. Looks like Chris made Mark happy, so that's great. Okay, so let's keep going. Most of this is just going to be some live demo of some of these other commands. I'm quite lazy, so I've used the alias one a lot. So if I do alias list, it again is going to show me all of the queries and scripts that I've created. Some of these we ship with, so I think tables is in there by default, but you're going to want to create your own. And these are just going to be the things that you run over and over and over again. Now I've created one called top SQL, and let's say 5, and that's going to show me the 5 most expensive queries right now that we know of. If I do alias, oops, if you type in the right window, if I do alias list top SQL, it shows me all of the code behind that command. Now, I don't want to type that, and I don't have to remember what file it's in, and I don't have to remember where the file's at. So again, I just put it in as an alias. By the way, I stole this SQL from SQL Developer. There is a report in SQL Developer that shows you expensive queries. So I just copied and pasted it here, and I changed it a little bit. Now, I sent that 5 to the command. That's just, it's going to add values to any bind parameters, and it's binds by position. So if I had 3 binds in here, I would have by position, you know, top SQL, first one, the second one, and the third one. It's only got 1. So what's the most expensive SQL right now? This guy right here. You have a much better creativity than I, so you're going to have better alias ones than me. I think I create one called DOM, alias list. And Dom Giles wanted one just for him, so I created one just for him, and it basically prints a list of tables with some stats and how fresh their, you know, with some metadata and how fresh their statistics are. Let's see, which one do we want to do next? Oh, this one's great, DDL. So DDL is also a setting and it's a command. So let's look at the settings first. Help set DDL. And let's do show DDL. So these are the same format shapes that you see for DBMS metadata package that you can use to generate DDL. So under the covers, that's exactly what we're doing. We're making the DBMS metadata package DDL calls to get DDL for database objects for you, and using these settings. So I've got storage off, I've got referential constraints off, I have constraints off, and I have segment attributes off. So if I do DDL, we're in as demo. Let's just connect, just in case. Don't use my passwords, by the way. They're horrible. So DDL employees. So this command's not super fast, but that's just a reflection of that package call. The first time you run it, it's kind of expensive until you start to cache certain things. But eventually we will get back the DDL for that employees table. And eventually turns into a few seconds. Yep. So I got back exactly what I asked for. So here's the table generation. Here are my comments. No storage, right? No constraints, but I do have indexes. I have triggers. Yes, we support spool, so that's good. So I could say spool users JD Smith desktop imps.sql. Select, let's do DDL employees. Pretend you're a faster typer than me. You should be faster this time. Someone's asking for the ability to turn off DDL comments. That might be an enhancement request to the PL SQL team that manages the DBMS metadata package, but I will check. Now, let's also include the data in there. So select, I'm not going to use SQL format, I'm going to use a hint. Select insert star from employees. And for giggles, let's order it by employee ID. Spool off. And let's go look at that file now. File open. No, don't save. It should be all in here. Please don't make me a liar. Yeah, so here is everything I need to create this table and insert the data. Now some of you are going to call me a liar because I have not disabled the foreign key constraints and I haven't got the DDL for locations and regions and departments and countries, but you know how to go do that stuff, and I'm not going to put that in the demo because I don't want to do a 2-hour demo. SQLcl also supports bash scripting like you're used to doing and always doing. I could write these scripts and call them from the command line. I don't have to go into SQLcl and do this manually. You can do all of the same tricks. So let's do help set DDL again. Is comments not listed there? DDL employees. Yeah, if it's not in the help, that's a bug. I kind of wish people would always add comments to their stuff. People think their objects and code are self-documenting, but hey, but if you don't want them, you don't want them. That comment's still there. Boo. Maybe that's the table comment and not the column comments. Anywho, I'll go take a look at that and make sure it's docked properly. So if you have a fun, instead of fun, I'm going to say usable command window technology, you can do things like use Unicode characters in your prompts. So you can have dynamic prompts. So when you log in as specific users, you can have color coding to say, hey, I'm in a production system and I need to act carefully. We have lots of examples on how to do this. Chris Rice has examples on his blog. I think I've talked about it a few times on mine. So that's kind of a fun one. I did this whole thing. Okay, so this might be a more practical alias one, dealing with execution plans. So explain plan, if you talk to Maria Colgan for more than 2 minutes, you're going to find out that explain plan sucks. Don't ever use it. So in SQLcl, just create an alias called plan, which I think I've done. So let's run something. Let's do select star from DBA data files. What's the plan on that? That's the plan on that. So all that did was it run dbmsxplan for the last statement. Now, what I need to do is set my page size higher. Set page size 200. And let's do that query again. There. So there's the plan. I can't think of a faster way to do this than that. And if my tool or our tools aren't saving you time, either not using it right or we've built the tool wrong or it's not the right tool for you. Yep, alias, we covered that one. Here's an interesting one, CTAS, what us guys in the know call it, but create table as select. All we've done is we say CTAS, an object and a new object, and we'll throw into the buffer a create table as select. So we get the DDL for the existing object, and then add to that an as select star from, and then we substitute the new table name here, and then use the old table name in the select from. So that doesn't run by default. It gets put into the buffer, so you can then edit it and change it. Maybe you want to add a where clause, or maybe you want to rename some of the columns. You can do that. So that's a lot of typing to be saved, I think. DDL, we've covered that one. Output formatting, covered this one. I'm hoping I have a slide in here for, we covered history. Oh yeah, okay. So here's the old way, describe, which is often shortened to desk. So let's describe employees. This is a good example because it sounds like there's a fierce debate on the importance of comments. So here's my employees something. Is this a table? Is it a view? Hell if I know. Does it have a primary key? Maybe. What do these columns mean? How fresh are the statistics? Are there any indexes? What are the foreign key constraints on this table? I don't know. This is what describe wants to show us for this object. So we thought, hey, maybe if you've got a few more seconds to spare, maybe you might like a little bit more verbose version of this. So we've created a new command called information, which we have also shortened to info. And let's see what we see for that same object. So this is going to take just a few seconds longer because we're grabbing more data. So now I've got actual more info. I know that this is a table. I know how fresh the statistics are. I've got very basic statistic info. How many rows? What's the sample size? Heck, it's even telling me if the table's in memory or not. It's not. That's bad. We need that. Now I need to go fix that. So I've also got the table comments themselves. We're painting the primary key column with the asterisk. And you also get the comments on the columns themselves. Again, we're agreeing comments aren't bad. We're also showing you a list of indexes and a list of not all the constraints, but the foreign key constraints. We can info more than just tables. You can say imp. Now I'm going to do the tab again, and we'll auto-complete that. So I can do an info. I think that's the index for the, or is that the constraint? It doesn't matter. What I want is this one. It looks like we've got a little bug there, but here is the info on the view. It's not quite right. Let's try that again. Yeah, I thought it printed more. Maybe not. That's okay. If you want more information, you can always use the DDL command on that, and it would get pull out the query too. Now there is a variation on info. We also have something called info plus. Here's secret. I don't know. Trick. Oops, I accidentally hit. We almost called this tool SQL++, but that created more problems than it solved. But we do have a plus command. Info plus HR employees. So instead of polluting the screen with all those comments, we instead are showing you statistical information. So what are the high-low values for each column? How many distincts? What are the histograms collected on those columns? And then again, the indexes and references. So you've got two variations of info and info plus. I told you guys we weren't going to use the whole hour. And gosh, if I have not taken that whole hour, I apologize. I just like to talk too much, I guess. The command completion can also be used for more than just object names. So I could say alter session tab and say, well, set tab, events tab. You know, so you can tab yourself crazy there if you want. All right, I'm not going to talk about this at all. What I'm going to instead do is use this to tease another webinar that you can watch on Thursday. But very quickly, what you're able to do in SQLcl is expand basically what the tool can do by whatever you can manage to code in JavaScript. So client-side scripting where you can interact with what we're doing with the database, for example. One of the cooler examples is what I've got shown here on the screen, and the lead dev on this project and someone who wrote most of the code, Chris Rice, this is his example. So what he's done is he's written a JavaScript that traverses the contents of a directory on your client and loads those files as blobs to a table. And I think this is the totality of all of that code. Now, if you were to do this in pure SQL and pure Bash scripting or Windows command scripting, it's not going to be nearly this easy. So what I will do, instead of showing you more of that, is encourage you. So this isn't an Oracle sponsored webinar, but it is brought to you by our friends at ODTUG, and they're awesome. So we have a Oracle ACE hosting this. Sabine, she's based in Germany. I can't remember if Robert Mars is an ACE either, but he's super excellent in talking about this. And we have an Oracle employee, Chris Saxon of the Oracle Ask Tom team, are going to spend, I think, it's an hour. It's the whole time just on what you can do with this cool scripting stuff. And it's not just JavaScript. You've got access to Python, Perl, and actually more than that. So if you love to code and you really want to stretch SQLcl's muscles, that's a must-see webinar. Okay, if you want a 10-minute version of this video, if you come to the SQLcl page, scroll down, here's the 10-minute elevator pitch for this tool. If you want to download it, it's on OTN. However, trick, if you've already got SQL Developer, I think it's starting in version 4.2, maybe 4.1. Just go down into the bin directory. And in there, you will see, and it's actually all three of these. Yeah, so you can run SQLcl directly out of your existing SQL Developer directory. We have a forum for SQLcl. We have a Twitter account. We've got YouTube channels. So if you want more info, it's out there. Now, what I'm going to do now is thank everyone for attending. I'm not kicking you off, but I'm going to stop the recording.